and gets involved in anything else, including judging how stupid this is. We came for a talk and all of a sudden we're doing this stupid exercise. Or whatever is flitting through the mind at the moment, just making it so spacious that you can see whatever's unfolding, hear my guidance as I'm speaking, and at the same time ride on the wave of the breath coming in and the breath going out with full awareness. And a kind of interest, a kind of, in some sense, affectionate attention. Even if the breath isn't all that interesting to you or all that boring, or your mind says, okay, I get that concept, what else? Just staying with the breath. And then playing with the possibility of expanding the field of awareness around the breath, wherever you're experiencing it most in the body, until it includes a sense of the body as a whole, sitting here or standing here, breathing. And noticing you can do that just easy as pie. It's not really a doing, but when I say it, you can easily, the awareness can hold the whole body to one degree or another. And whatever degree you can hold it, that's fine. It's not like, oh, if I practiced, I'd get better at this. That's just a thought, never mind. Just letting the thoughts come and go and staying with the awareness of the body as a whole, sitting and breathing. And if possible, remembering that this isn't some simple little exercise that we're doing in the middle of a talk. That this is your life unfolding in this very moment. And this breath is important to you. You wouldn't want to do without it. So with that kind of quality of attending, that it's not really, it's like tuning a guitar string, you know, too loose, no true tone, too tight, no true tone. But if you can just bring the lightest of touches of awareness to the sense of the body as a whole, breathing. As if it mattered. And of course it does. Because it's your body in this moment, it's your life, and the breath is vital. And then one more before we end. Noticing any thoughts that may be moving through your mind, and noticing how easy it is to self-distract, that the mind does wander, and it wanders away from the breath. If we did this for any period of time, sooner or later your mind would be someplace else, probably not even in the room. Maybe not even in the present moment. You'd be having dinner in Paris, or Bangkok, or in an argument 3 years ago in the shower with yourself. So when you notice the mind is self-distracted, no problem, no judging, or if you judge it, don't judge the judging, and just see if you can come back to this moment in awareness, featuring whatever object of attention you care to. It could be anything that's in the field of awareness. But the last little piece is to just underscore that none of this is about the sound of the bells. None of this is about the feeling of the breath in the body. None of this is about the thoughts moving through the mind. Those are all important and they're secondary, but what it's really about is the awareness that knows the sound when it comes to the ears, that knows, and I mean non-conceptually knows, not just conceptually, knows the feeling of the breath moving in the body. Non-conceptually, it inhabits the body as a whole in awareness, sitting and breathing. Non-conceptually knows when the mind self-distracts, or when we get into an emotional whirlpool or turbulence of some kind or another. And the awareness can just allow it to just be here, feature it center stage, let it come, let it go. And meanwhile, we just continue to rest in awareness, outside of time, because the present moment is timeless in some profound way. And awareness and silence and stillness are all different ways of saying the same thing, of pointing to something that's already yours, that you don't have to get, but has tremendous healing potential, tremendous potential for learning, for seeing things in new ways, for that rotation in consciousness that I was speaking of. Everything's the same, only nothing's the same. Why? Because you showed up in your fullness. So learning, and out of that learning, growing. And out of that growing, healing, which in my vocabulary, the way I define healing is coming to terms with things as they are. Coming to terms with things as they are. Very different from curing. There are very few cures in medicine, but the opportunity for healing, as long as there's breath, it's in some sense already here. All we need to do is see it, feel it, live it. And it's not about denying pain and suffering. It's about, in some sense, befriending even that. So resting for a final few moments in stillness, in silence, in wakefulness, in full awareness. Outside of time, as if you had nothing to do, no place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. Because you're already whole. The root meaning, by the way, of the words health and healing, and even the word holy, H-O-L-Y. And by the same token, the word medicine and the word meditation, they grow out of the same tree, same root, Indo-European root. Medicine and meditation are joined at the hip. So it's not so radical to actually bring them together in mainstream clinical care. In fact, it's essential for caring. So silent wakefulness. Attending to what is. So now the real meditation practice never stops. Just because some bells got rung, just because we're going to shift gears a little bit. The real meditation practice is how you live your life from moment to moment. It's not how good you are sitting without moving, or what great yoga poses you do, because yoga is itself a meditation, a beautiful form of meditation that we use enormously and to good purpose in MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. I'd like to just say a few things about stress and medicine, and then open it up to, and give you a little bit more of an expanse of how we work. But I wanted you to have at least this taste of it, and I want to share a couple of poems with you. And it's not like all of a sudden I've gotten a little weird I'm going a little weird on you. How many of you, when you heard the word poetry or poems, you go, yeah, oh no, not a poem. It's like, I don't understand those things. That's not uncommon. But one of my colleagues, John Teasdale, with whom I wrote that book, The Mindful Way Through Depression, who is like one of the world's great cognitive scientists, is coming out with several papers in which he's arguing that, that the root cause of suffering in human beings is not knowing how to deal with our emotions, because we don't know how to inhabit and then shift our relationship to what he calls implicational meaning. Implicational meaning is what moves, say, in poetry. Okay? It's different from the propositional meaning, which is just the kind of bare facts. Okay? So if I'll recite a poem for you. This is a poem by Antonio Machado, who's a great Spanish poet of the turn of the 19th to 20th century and won the Nobel Prize. It's very short, but see if you can feel it. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. In exchange for the odor of my jasmine, I would like the odor of your roses. I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Can you feel that? How many times have we had that feeling or similar feeling? I have no roses. There's nothing beautiful about me. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Well, then I'll take the withered petals and the yellowed leaves and the waters in the fountain. And the wind left, and I wept. And I said to myself, what have you done to the garden that was entrusted to you? Can you feel that? This is a poem about great sadness. Could easily go into depression. I actually, just because it's a Nobel laureate doesn't mean, you know, I like to actually change the last line. And I would suggest that for our purposes, rather than what have you done to the garden that was entrusted to you, which is a kind of blaming, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's like, stick the knife in and then, oh, right, as long as I'm feeling down, why not just go right over the edge? And a lot of cultures actually perpetrate that kind of perspective. But instead, why don't we say, what are we doing with the gardens that are entrusted to us? Gardens, plural, okay? Because right now we have a lot of gardens entrusted to us, I would say. The closest to us is, I would say, the garden of the body. You know, better than an American Express credit card. You can't leave home without it. But a lot of the time, we're not even in the body. And a lot of the time, our feelings about the body are so negative that, like, the less said, the better. Just don't bother me about the body. You know, I don't even want to know it exists. If it is not driving me crazy, I feel lucky. And James Joyce is famous for starting out a short story in Dubliners with the following sentence. This is an approximation, but it's, Mr. Duffy lived a short distance from his body. And if you start to pay attention in the way that I'm suggesting, in the present moment, you'll discover that that's your address as well. A lot of the time, we're in our heads, lost in thought, someplace else, not in the body. That has biological consequences, by the way. Everything I've said tonight, when I started the stress reduction clinic in 1979, it was like there was almost no science of the effects of stress and the biology of stress on the body and on the mind and on the brain and on the heart. Now, the data is just like overwhelming, including, as I'll show you in a minute, aging. That it's turning out that, stress, they used to say stress is not a real risk factor for morbidity or mortality because, it's not like, high-fat diet, it's not like cigarette smoking, it's not like hypertension, high blood pressure. But now it turns out there's incontrovertible evidence that stress actually increases the rate of degradation of the ends of all of our chromosomes, which are called telomeres. You're going to hear a lot more about that word. The woman, Liz Blackburn at UCSF, who actually discovered telomerase, which is the enzyme that builds them back up, won the Nobel Prize in 2008. Okay? And her lab is studying the effects of mindfulness on telomeres and telomerase. And the evidence is moving in the direction of meditation can actually enhance telomerase. And not just that, it's more than meditation or mindfulness. It's your attitude towards what's happening. It's not like these people aren't under a huge amount of stress, but it's never the stress. It's how you choose to be in relationship to it. And if you have really exhausted your resources for handling stress, then of course, yeah, all bets are off. But if you know how to draw resources to yourself, then even under very, very high levels of stress, you can dance with the energies. Sometimes it's unbelievably painful, but nevertheless, you're much bigger even than the pain and suffering, and liberate yourself from that. And guess what? The telomeres get longer. So every aspect of our biology is what's now called plastic. And that's a new terminology. It's not like, Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. This is for the older people in the room. But it means that our biology is miraculous in another way. It's constantly reorganizing itself. It's not just it's all downhill from here. Yes, there is aging. Yes, we are all going to die unless somebody makes a very important discovery very quickly. But, the question is not, is there life after death, or is there some way to escape death, but actually, can we live while we have a chance? Is there life before death? That's the most interesting question. And right up to the moment of death. And a lot of time I think that really when we talk about fear of death, we're really more afraid of life than we are of death. And there are two chapters. I was going to actually tell you some stories, but I don't think I will, about my early days at MIT, one of which was how I got into meditation. I got into meditation at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology as a graduate student in molecular biology with a Nobel laureate. Believe it or not, go figure. Not in some monastery in Asia. Because the Zen master came and gave a talk, actually, at MIT. And I was one of 5 people in all of MIT that went to the talk and took the head off, took the top off my head at the age of 22. And it was like, oh my God, there's an entirely different way of knowing. Why didn't they tell us this in kindergarten? An entirely different way of knowing, and no less beautiful, no less profound, no less transformative than thought. Just different. And this should be part of the repertoire, so to speak, and part of the science and investigation. The other thing was the story of my thesis defense, because I wrote, a thesis on some arcane topic in molecular biology, and I had, it's like all these MIT Nobel laureate types, real hotshot molecular biologists, and a few from Harvard who came over because you always have to have someone from another institution. And my thesis, it was an existential challenge for me. I don't know how many of you are graduate students here? Anybody a graduate student? It's like hard. Hard to be a graduate student because nobody cares. And most of the time you don't either. But it could be really humiliating and like, you know, and then of course if you're a scientist, science is 99% failure, which doesn't do that much for, you know, your self-esteem, so to speak. And then you're looking for that 1%. And so I finally got my thesis together, and I wrote in the front page, on a page by itself, you know, they let you have a little dedication, little sayings or something like that. I wrote, "He who dies before he dies does not die when he dies." I don't even know where I got it, you know. It's like, it was some Greek, very old Greek. So I put that line in the first, you know, page by itself before you get into the thesis and so forth. So I go into the room with all these scientists who are going to decide whether I get my doctorate or not after what's called I don't know even, I forgot what they even call it, but a thesis review, or, you know, defense, right, defense, it's a war term, yeah. They're going to attack and I'm going to defend, and if I do it well enough, then, so I go in there, and, you know, I knew them all because it's just a small community and everybody, you know, sort of likes each other, but I was, of course, terrified. I mean, you know, it's like a lot hangs in the balance. And so somebody says, what's this, he who dies before he dies does not die when he dies? This is the first question on my thesis. So I've worked 5 years on this research, and they want to know, he who dies before he dies. Of course, they were pushing 50. You know, I was 27 or something like that. They were in their 50s and, like, thinking ahead. That obviously piqued some interest. You die before you die, you don't die when you die. I want that. So I said, do you really want to know? And they all said, yeah. So I said, well, it might take some time. They said, we've got time. So actually, I would say half of my thesis defense was actually unpacking what mindfulness is about to these guys. This was in 1971, by the way. And I wrote it up. It's a chapter called Dying Before You Die, Duh, because the first Dying Before You Die was the other story that I told about, you know, first encountering meditation at MIT. So that's just to say that I didn't want to continue a career in molecular biology. I wanted to bring my training as a scientist together with my training in meditation, because it seemed like, well, everybody's doing the science, but nobody's paying attention to the balance between thought and this other function of our brains and nervous system that no one's paying attention to, called awareness, that is patently, obviously bigger than thought, because whatever thought you have or whatever emotion you have, you could embrace it in awareness and not have to do anything with it, but it would change by virtue of simply holding it in awareness, if you were patient enough to do it, especially if it didn't feel good. And so that's what we teach now, and it's come into the mainstream of medicine in ways that are really astonishing. The National Institutes of Health is funding hundreds of studies on mindfulness to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. And the idea that that would have been the case in 1979, I like to say, more improbable than that the Big Bang would just all of a sudden stop and implode back on itself. And yet it's happening. And so mindfulness is now in the mainstream of medicine. And in the last, so I'll just show you some pictures before we go to questions, okay? Would that be all right with you? Are you still awake? Good, because you don't ever have to stop, even when you go to sleep. I mean, you know, that it's being present. That's all. Being fully present, okay? Is anybody good at this? No, okay? So don't make like, oh, I'm no good at this. Nobody's any good at it. But all you need to do is be a little bit better than automatic pilot, and your life will rotate. I mean, it will be very, very different. And every time anger comes up, the default mode comes up, whether it's anger or anything else. Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say, you know, the reason we have to practice mindfulness, the reason we have to cultivate it intentionally, is that we're busy cultivating the opposite all day long. Cultivating anger, cultivating jealousy, cultivating, you know, sort of low self-esteem, cultivating, you know, all sorts of negativity in the emotional domain or in the thought domain. And the people who are doing the telomere research are saying that their research is showing that the real stress comes from thinking. So this is a biological and molecular biological consequence that accelerates aging and accelerates a lot of heart disease. I mean, it's you know, you can't interview people who die of sudden cardiac death. But if you could, you'd find out, like, probably it was a thought that did it. The wrong thought at the wrong time, dead. I'm actually not joking. I mean, it's so serious that we need to laugh. And I want to say that about meditation, too. It may have seemed like I'm not taking this stuff seriously. This stuff is so serious that it's too serious to take too seriously. And I'm serious. So this is, if any of you were alive back then, this is the cover of Time magazine back in 1983, 4 years after I'd started the stress reduction clinic. And it's just like, you know, I look back on that time and I say, stress? What stress? Compared to now. I mean, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no instant messaging, there was, I mean, you know, there were no computers except mainframes. I used to say in the early 80s that I could get more once I had my first PC, you know, which was like gigantic.